Business tonight, there seems no stopping the freefall in Adani stocks, down for a sixth trading session. The conglomerate's flagship Adani Enterprises sank as much as 27%. That adds to yesterday's 28% tumble, which prompted the company to shelve $2.5 billion share sale and return the money to investors. A look at a broader Indian market. After choppy trade, the Sensex ended in a green, while the Nifty closed almost flat. And the scrutiny of Gautam Adani's empire is intensifying. India's central bank has reportedly asked local lenders for details of their exposure to the Adani group. The public sector banks have massive exposure to Adani companies. Questions are raised about the potential default risks linked to Indian banks after the firms lose nearly a third of their market value. Still, the embattled billionaire says his company is in good shape.
The fundamentals of our company are very strong. Our balance sheet is healthy and assets robust. Our EBITDA levels and cash flows have been very strong, and we have an impeccable track record of fulfilling our debt obligations.
Now, for more, we have David Kuo, co-founder of The Smart Investor, joining us from Singapore. David, thank you for joining us. Now, with Adani Enterprises cancelling the follow-on offer, how will it service its debt?
That's a really good question, and that is something that Mr. Adani didn't even address. And I think this is probably a classic case of how not to do corporate communications. There is an issue from Hindenburg Research that is questioning the balance sheet and the debt levels of the Adani Group. And Mr. Adani hasn't addressed any of those issues. And I compare this incident, with something that happened 9 years ago when there was another short seller over in America by the name of Muddy Waters that was casting aspersions over a Singapore company called Olam International. And Olam International came out and addressed each one of those issues. And as a result of that, Olam is still standing today. So I think what Adani Group really needs to do is to come out and address all of those issues rather than simply sort of say that, oh, this is an attack against India. I mean, playing the nationalism card doesn't really sort of help in this issue because we're talking about finance. And when you see the share price fall, when you see the bond prices start to fall, then, of course, the banks will get jittery, and also the insurance companies, because the insurance companies in India must be holding a lot of Adani bonds.
Now, David, given observations that the group is over-leveraged, how will it fund ongoing businesses and ambitious growth plans, bearing in mind that it's gone big into areas it didn't have much experience, such as airports?
Well, it is a sprawling conglomerate. And of course, with a sprawling conglomerate, you need controls and you also need money, which was what the follow-on offer was really all about. It was to raise $2.5 billion US. Hopefully, from outside investors, and that money was going to be used for servicing some of its debts. So I think, Hindenburg Research or Hindenburg shorters over in America have got a really good point. They're saying that how are you going to be able to continue to fund your operations? Simply for Mr. Adani to come out and say the cash flow is strong is fine. The cash flow may very well be very strong, but you need to be able to service that debt. And if you can't, then, of course, there are going to be really serious questions about the survivability of this conglomerate. And will it, at some point in time, it wasn't that long ago, Paul, when we saw what happened over in China, when we had over-leveraged property developers. And of course, they had to come out and sell some of their assets in order to fund their ongoing business. And it really depends on whether or not the Indian banks are prepared to stand behind the Adani Group. And by the look of things, they probably aren't. They're probably sort of saying that, we're going to get cold feet. And the other thing, Paul, is that a lot of investors have been asking me, should I be going out and buying, some of those Adani shares? Should I be going out and buying the Adani bonds? And my answer to them is really quite simple. Until you have some kind of clarity, you don't really want to sort of be putting your money into anything like that. It is always better to stay out of trouble than to try and get out of trouble later on.
Now, David, corporate attacks by short sellers in Asia generally haven't ended well. I'm thinking Noble Group. Now, Is Adani at risk of going the same way?
Well, the thing about a short seller is that what the short seller is doing is questioning certain things that are happening in the market. You can only short sell a particular company if your research, if your analysis is correct, and you're saying that something is not right about this company, something is not right about this business. If the market doesn't buy that, if the market doesn't believe that, then of course the short seller will have to at some point in time buy back the shares that it borrowed from somebody, which is really what short selling is all about. A short seller goes into the market, borrows the shares, sells the shares in the market, comes out with its story, and if the market buys that story, then of course the share price falls, and the person that is shorting those shares can then go back and buy those shares at a cheaper price and sort of return it to the person whom they borrowed the shares from in the first place. But it only works if the research is correct. And by the look of things at the moment, the research is not wrong, and the market is beginning to believe that there is something not right about this company. And so consequently, the Adani group, Mr. Adani, needs to come out and address those issues. Simply sort of coming out and saying that everything is fine, I'll wait until things stabilize before I sort of go and try to sort of follow-on offer again, isn't really going to work, because when is stability going to arrive? The other thing, of course, Kok Eng, is when you borrow money, people, through bonds, I mean, there are certain caveats in those bonds, certain things that trigger the bondholders who will say, as a result of the share price falling significantly or something happening in that business, then, of course, the bondholders can actually turn around and say, I'm taking control of this company now, because clearly there is something wrong with the management. So this is a story that will need to play out over a period of time. But at the moment, it doesn't look particularly good, for the Adani group.
Well, an Indian minister has assuaged concerns that the fallout over Adani would have no impact on India's economy. Your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, the Adani Group is only one company. And it wasn't that long ago, Paul. I remember back in 2009, I think, there were some short sellers that were attacking a company called Infosys at the time, questioning some of the accounts over there. Then, of course, a few years later, there was another short seller that went and attacked Satayam, an IT company over in India. And did it have any effect on the IT business in India? Probably not. But I think in this particular case, I think simply because the Adani Group has its fingers in so many pies. I mean, it's got airport services, it's got food production, it's got port operations, it's got infrastructure, it's got a lot of things going on at the same time. And will it have an impact on India? Probably not, because I think, India is much bigger than that. But we do have to be cognizant of the fact that the fall in the value of the Adani Group, I mean, over $100 billion US, that is equivalent to 1 year's economic output for a country such as Kuwait. So, I mean, it's not insignificant, but in comparison to India as an economy, probably it isn't that significant. And there will be people who will be out there. If the Adani Group does fail, for instance, there'll be people out there with money in their back pockets who will turn around and say, I can actually take over this company. It won't look good for Mr. Adani, but as far as the Indian economy is concerned, I haven't really sort of got any worries at all. India is a lot bigger than that.
Thank you for those insights, David. David Kuo, co-founder of The Smart Investor.